Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're taking a deep dive into a region that's not only visually stunning, but also brimming with opportunity.
Opportunity for growth, you mean?
Exactly. We're talking about Northeast India, and more specifically, its tourism potential.
Northeast India, a region that's often overlooked, but honestly has so much to offer.
Right, and we're going to cover it all. Plus, if you're out there prepping for those big government exams like the SSC, RBI, NABARD, or even the UPSC, today's deep dive is like a cheat sheet, especially with the International Tourism Mart coming up.
ITM for short.
Yep, ITM. Did I mention that ITM 2024 is happening in Kaziranga, Assam?
Home of the one-horn rhino.
See, that's already a potential exam question right there. But let's dig a little deeper than trivia, shall we?
Let's.
What makes the Northeast such a tourism hotspot? And how does the ITM event play into all of this?
Okay, first, picture this. Lush green valleys, snow-capped peaks, a cultural tapestry so rich and diverse. Think land of the Seven Sisters and Sikkim. That's Northeast India in a nutshell.
Sounds absolutely breathtaking. But we're not just here to admire the scenery. We're going to unpack how the government is really making moves to boost tourism in the region.
Because it's not just about pretty pictures. Right?
Exactly. Sustainable development, cultural preservation, these are always hot topics. So tell me more about this ITM. Is it just a fancy travel fair or what?
Oh, it's so much more than that. ITM is all about connections, bringing together the people behind Northeast India's tourism sector with the rest of the world. Imagine this, over 400 participants.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and not just random people. We're talking tour operators, hoteliers, government officials, you name it. Even influencers these days.
So it's like a global networking hub, but specifically for Northeast India's tourism.
You got it. And it's not all just presentations and handshakes. There are cultural evenings planned, food demonstrations so you can actually taste the region's flavors, and even a Northeast Bazaar. They really try to make it an experience.
Okay, now you're making me hungry. But seriously, events like this are perfect for understanding the real-world side of tourism development, stuff that could definitely pop up on an exam.
Absolutely. But the ITM, it's just one event, right? What about the government's long-term strategy? How are they boosting tourism in the Northeast year-round?
Well, that's where those government schemes come into play, don't they? The ones we always hear about.
Precisely. But I promise, no dry lectures here.
Good, because our listeners are a smart bunch. They want to understand the how and the why, not just memorize a bunch of acronyms.
I hear a way. Let's start with something called Swadesh Darshan 2.0. This scheme is all about promoting sustainable and responsible tourism. We're talking ecotourism, cultural heritage preservation, even empowering local communities, making sure the benefits are widespread.
That's good to hear. Especially from an exam point of view, it shows the government's thinking long-term, not just chasing quick wins.
Exactly.
So what else is on the agenda?
Okay, next up we've got PRASHAD, a scheme specifically geared towards developing pilgrimage tourism.
Pilgrimage tourism, huh? Okay, now I'm curious. Tell me more. How does this fit into the picture?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that Northeast India is home to a significant number of sites that hold deep religious and spiritual importance.
Interesting.
So by developing these sites, improving the infrastructure, PRASHAD aims to attract pilgrims from all over India and even internationally. It's a really clever way to tap into a specific niche.
And it probably gives a nice boost to the local economies too, right?
Of course, it all ties together.
So far, we've got ecotourism, we've got cultural preservation, and now pilgrimage tourism. Sounds like they're covering all the bases. What else is up their sleeve?
Now, this one might seem a little less directly related to tourism at first, but trust me, it's crucial. UDAN-RCS. That stands for Regional Connectivity Scheme.
Oh yeah, UDAN-RCS. That's the one that's all about making air travel more accessible, right?
Yeah.
Especially to more remote places.
Exactly. And in a region like the Northeast, where many areas are so difficult to reach by road, having better air connectivity is a game changer for tourism.
I can only imagine. Easier to reach destinations, maybe some hidden gems out there. More tourists means more opportunities for the folks who live there.
Exactly. It opens up so many doors.
So it sounds like UDAN-RCS is kind of like laying the groundwork for all these other tourism initiatives to take off. It's not just about tourists either. It benefits everyone who lives there.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And they've really been backing this up with action. Look at airports like Pasahat and Zero, for example. These were developed specifically to improve access to some of the more remote parts of the Northeast.
That's impressive. So we've got UDAN-RCS opening up the region, then Swadesh Darshan 2.0, and PRASHAD developing specific types of tourism experiences. What other schemes should we have on our radar?
All right, picture this. You're standing on a viewpoint overlooking the most incredible vista. Maybe you're surrounded by mountains, a river flowing below.
Okay, I'm getting a serious case of wanderlust just thinking about it.
And of course, you want to capture that perfect photo, right?
Who wouldn't?
Well, that's where the Assistance to Central Agencies for Tourism Infrastructure Development scheme comes in. It's all about making sure those viewpoints exist, that there are facilities, good infrastructure, stuff that makes the whole experience better, not just for tourists, but for everyone.
It's true. Investing in infrastructure like that pays off in so many ways, not just attracting tourists, but improving quality of life overall.
Right. And speaking of what makes a place special, let's not forget about Northeast India's incredible cultural scene.
Oh yeah, this is what I've been waiting for. Tell me about the festivals, the music, the art.
The Northeast, it's truly a kaleidoscope of unique festivals and events. And the government actually has a scheme to support that. Assistance for organizing fairs, festivals, tourism-related events. They provide funding to help states and UTs organize and promote these events.
So it's not just about infrastructure, but also about celebrating the heart and soul of the region. Imagine experiencing the Hornbill Festival in Nagaland or Baihu celebrations in Assam. It's a chance to really connect with the local culture on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And speaking of unique experiences, there's one more initiative we need to talk about, one that launched pretty recently, just last year actually, the Travel for Life initiative.
Travel for life. Okay, that's got me intrigued. What's the focus there?
Sustainability. It's all about encouraging both tourists and businesses to be more mindful of their impact on the environment, to engage in responsible travel.
It makes sense. Sustainable tourism is more than just a trendy term. It's about making sure that future generations can enjoy the beauty of a place without harming it.
Exactly. And the government, it seems like they're trying to tackle this issue from all angles. But before we go any further, I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts on all this? What stands out to you about the government's approach to tourism in the Northeast?
Honestly, I'm pretty impressed by how thorough they're being. It's not just about bringing in tourists. It's about making it easier for people to get there, about making it sustainable, and about the long-term well-being of the people who actually live there.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a multi-pronged approach, and that's something really important to remember for those exams, showing that you understand how all these schemes connect, that you see the bigger picture. That's what examiners love.
That's incredibly helpful advice. But we've talked a lot about the government side of things, but what about the people? How are the local communities shaping tourism in the Northeast? That's what I'm really curious to explore next.
You're absolutely right. The government might provide the framework, but it's the local communities who truly bring tourism to life. And that's exactly where we'll be heading in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive into the heart and soul of tourism in Northeast India, the local communities, let's take a step back and make sure we've really connected those dots on all those government schemes we've been talking about.
Good idea. I mean, for our listeners out there who are gearing up for exams, it's not enough to just be able to list them off.
Right. You have to show you understand how they all work together.
Yeah, like what's the big picture, the why behind all these different initiatives? So how do we make those connections in a way that makes sense, especially for exam prep?
Think of it like building a house.
Okay.
You need a strong foundation before you can start adding walls and a roof.
Right, of course.
In this case, UDAN-RCS is like that foundation. Improving air connectivity makes the entire region more accessible, and that's crucial for tourism to really take off.
Okay, so better air connectivity is like setting the stage for everything else. What comes next?
So you've got the foundation. What's the next step when you're building a house?
Well, you start putting up the walls, the structure.
Exactly. And that's what schemes like Swadesh Darshan 2.0 and PRASHAD are all about. They're focused on developing specific types of tourism, but always with sustainability and community benefits in mind.
So it's not just about attracting any kind of tourism. Yep. It's about attracting the right kind, the kind that respects the environment, the local cultures, and makes sure the communities actually benefit.
You got it. And remember those viewpoints we talked about.
Yeah.
And the need for good infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Makes the whole experience so much better.
Well, that's like adding those finishing touches to the house.
Yeah.
The Assistance to Central Agencies for Tourism Infrastructure Development scheme, making sure the Northeast has what it needs to really support a thriving tourism sector.
Makes sense. So we've got the foundation with UDAN-RCS, the structure with Swadesh Darshan 2.0 PRASHAD, and the finishing touches with infrastructure development.
Right.
But where does the assistance for organizing fairs, festivals, tourism-related events scheme fit in?
It's like adding personality. You know, when you walk into a house and it's got all these little touches that make it feel warm and inviting, that's what supporting festivals and fairs does for the Northeast. It showcases the region's unique culture.
Oh, I love that analogy. It really helps me visualize how these different schemes, they're not just separate things. They're all working together towards the same goal.
Exactly.
And that's something that exam takers should definitely highlight in their answers, right?
Absolutely. Like, let's say you get a question about the role of UDAN-RCS in the development of Northeast India.
Okay.
Don't just say it improves air connectivity. Take it a step further. Explain how that makes it easier for tourists to reach those areas where they're implementing Swadesh Darshan 2.0 projects, or how it makes it easier for people to attend a festival that's getting support through that fairs and festival scheme.
Oh, that's a really good example.
Yeah.
It shows you're not just repeating facts from a textbook, but you actually get it.
Right, you're making connections. And always try to back up your points with specific examples. Like, don't just talk about improved connectivity. Mention those airports we discussed, Pesiat and Siro. Explain how they've opened up opportunities in areas that were tough to get to before.
So it's all about the details, the specifics.
Exactly. It makes your answers way more interesting, and it shows a deeper level of understanding. And hey, even beyond exams, this is stuff that helps us appreciate the bigger picture, you know, the thoughtfulness that's going into making tourism a real force for good in the Northeast.
Well said. But we've focused a lot on government schemes. There's another layer to all of this that's super important, I think, maybe even more so, the local communities themselves.
Couldn't agree more. The government can set the stage, but it's the people on the ground, the folks who call the Northeast home, who really make it an authentic experience for visitors.
And that's what I'm excited to dive into. How are these communities shaping the tourism landscape? Why is their involvement so crucial for making sure this growth is sustainable and benefits everyone? That's where we're heading next.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Northeast India's tourism potential. We've talked about government schemes, we've analyzed their impact, but now it's time to get to the heart of it all.
The local communities.
Exactly. They're the ones who truly bring tourism to life. So let's paint a picture for our listeners. How are these communities actually shaping the tourism landscape? What are they doing that makes the experience so special?
Imagine this. You're traveling through the Northeast, and instead of checking into some big impersonal hotel, you find yourself welcomed into a cozy homestay. Well, I love homestays.
Right. And it's run by a local family. You're sharing meals with them, hearing their stories, learning about their traditions firsthand. It's a whole different level of immersion.
It's like stepping into a different world, one that's rich in culture and tradition, and so much more personal than just staying at a hotel.
Exactly. And that's exactly what so many communities in the Northeast are doing. They're opening their homes and their hearts to tourists, offering an authenticity you just can't find in those prepackaged tours.
It's tourism with a personal touch, and I bet it creates a much deeper connection between the traveler and the place.
Absolutely. And it's not just about homestays either. These communities are also sharing their knowledge, their skills. Think cultural performances, craft workshops, culinary experiences.
So you could learn to weave a traditional shawl, or maybe learn how to make momos from scratch with a family in Sikkim.
Exactly. It's all about those immersive experiences. You're not just observing, you're participating.
Now, for our listeners who are studying for exams, how does all of this tie into that concept of sustainable tourism that we keep hearing about?
That's a great question. When communities are directly involved in tourism like this, they've got skin in the game, so to speak. They have a real stake in making sure their culture is preserved, their environment is protected.
Because it directly benefits them. It's not just some big company coming in and taking profit.
Right. It's a win-win situation. Tourists get those authentic, unforgettable experiences, and the communities benefit economically while also preserving what makes them unique.
It's a beautiful
Well,
side.
it goes even deeper than that. A lot of communities are actively involved in ecotourism initiatives. They're the ones leading those nature walks, promoting responsible wildlife viewing, working hard to conserve their natural resources.
So they're not just passively benefiting from tourism, they're actively shaping how it develops, making sure it's something that's sustainable for generations to come.
Exactly. And this is something you should definitely highlight in those exam answers. When you're talking about tourism in Northeast India, don't just focus on those government schemes. Emphasize the role of those local communities in creating a truly sustainable model.
Okay, so how would we connect all of these dots in an exam answer?
Imagine you're asked to analyze What makes tourism in Northeast India sustainable? What factors are at play? You could start by outlining the government's efforts. Talk about those schemes like Swadesh Darshan 2.0 and the Travel for Life initiative.
So that covers the policy side of things. What next?
Then you bring in the human element. Talk about those communities, how they're embracing homestays, offering those immersive cultural experiences, and actively participating in ecotourism.
So you're showing that you understand both the top-down approach, what the government's doing, and the bottom-up approach, which is all about those local communities.
Exactly. It's about demonstrating that you see how those two forces work together to make tourism truly sustainable.
And like you said earlier, don't forget those specific examples, talking about a particular homestay program or a village that's doing amazing things in ecotourism.
Right. Because that's what brings it all to life. It shows it really understand the impact, the real world stuff that's happening on the ground.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. It's clear that the future of tourism in Northeast India is incredibly bright, especially with this emphasis on doing things the right way, sustainably, inclusively.
I couldn't agree more. It's such a special region, and it's really encouraging to see how tourism is being harnessed as a tool for positive change, not just for the economy, but for the communities themselves.
So as we wrap up today, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
Sustainable tourism, it's a team effort. It needs the government's support, it needs those communities to be actively involved, and it needs responsible travelers who want to experience all that Northeast India has to offer while respecting its people and its environment.
Well said. And for those of you hitting the books, remember to connect those dots. Government initiatives, community efforts, show those examiners that you understand the big picture and the real human impact of tourism in this incredible region. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.